Hello, I'm Sarah the Gallifreyan Ravenclaw. So, you've read the title of the video. Does this sketch...
What I need is a doctor. I know these teeth. What?
make this sketch...
Well, naturally, I anticipated your journey back to an even earlier point.
Doctor, will you stop showing off? You've got something to tell the Master. Just tell him.
Very well. I recently calculated that I have saved every planet in the known universe a minimum of 27 times. But you know, I have grown weary of all the evil in the cosmos, all the cruelty, all the suffering, all those endless gravel quarries. And so I have decided to retire.
Canon. Now, there's a number of questions in this, and for those of you who are already typing in the comments, no, neither are canon, nothing in this is canon. This was never meant to be a serious video, and I'm not really expecting the answer to be yes. I just wanted to sort of build the argument and see how well it stands. So I'll say some of the points sort of for and against and see how it comes out. So, as it's Red Nose Day again next weekend, I thought what better time to ask about this. As I'm sure you all remember last year before Red Nose Day, there was a lot of talk of, oh, we're getting a whole sketch, we're getting all this with David, and I was going, I don't think we're going to get that much. He's presenting, he'll do a small bit. There'd already been the picture of him and Lenny with him in costume released, so we knew there was something, but I was probably the only person who was like, no, that was about as much as I expected. Everyone else seemed to be, was that it? Oh, I thought there was going to be a massive thing. But it gave us this question. So, if you don't understand why I'm saying this, when clearly that's Rowan Atkinson and not Lenny Henry, is that in 1985 there was a sketch on the Lenny Henry show where he played the Doctor, which I will attempt to link above now. So if you haven't seen that, go and watch that first. Don't watch this video if you haven't seen any of the sketches I'm referring to. So in that, he is clearly supposed to be the newly regenerated Doctor. Like, she literally goes, you've changed. And in 1985, season 22 aired, which was the first series with the 6th Doctor. As that was aired between January and March, I assume it had already aired by the time that this episode came out, but I don't know the exact date that this episode was broadcast, and obviously it may have been filmed. And so it was probably filmed prior to the episode's airing, so when they made it, they didn't know what the 6th Doctor was like. He appeared in the titles, it was him and then it changed to Lenny, but obviously titles can have been added later. So I assume that in that he is supposed to be the 6th Doctor instead of Colin, but his costume, his outfit slightly contradicts that, as he's wearing a long scarf. And if he's the 6th Doctor newly regenerated, surely he should be wearing Peter Davison's costume. So, there's a lot of arguments over whether that could even fit in canonically, not factoring in the fact that season 22 exists. But is that sketch canon with Curse of Fatal Death? Lots of people seem to think so. It's even one of the YouTube videos of the bit from the Lenny Henry show actually refers to it as the Curse of Fatal Death Part 2. Not quite sure why they called it Part 2, when I'd say it probably canonically it should come beforehand, but lots of people do seem to agree that they do exist in the same universe. So, if we accept that Lenny Henry's Doctor and Rowan Atkinson's Doctor are the same Doctor, are the same character, then which one does come first? So I said, because of the titles and the air date, I assume that Lenny Henry is supposed to be the 6th Doctor, whereas Curse of Fatal Death was in Red Nose Day in 1999, so 14 years later, and during it the Master does refer to Rowan Atkinson's body as the Doctor's 9th body. So we'd assume he's supposed to be an earlier incarnation of the same character. So that then leaves the question of, is this the same person as this? Yes, they're the same actor, but are they the same person? That is the big question. In this, he is the Doctor, and in this, he is Sir Lenny Henry, who then regenerates. So, okay, you can argue Fob Watch. Unless you start talking chameleon arc, then you've got a problem of saying they're the same character. I will just say also, obviously, since that sketch, by generation. So you could argue also that maybe this is a older version of this one post-by generation. So this one regenerated into another body and then another one and then into Rowan Atkinson, whereas this one aged and then regenerated into David Tennant. I'm trying to come up with arguments to make it work, but they are becoming a bit of a stretch at some points. So this isn't strictly relevant to the original question, but I did just want to add, there is an entire thread of comments in the Curse of Fatal Death video on YouTube of people saying about the similarities between things that happen in Curse of Fatal Death and the incarnations that actually followed from 6 years later. So I said that Rowan Atkinson's Doctor is supposed to be the 9th body, so is after Paul McGann, but obviously this was 1999. Christopher Eccleston wasn't yet the Doctor for another 5-6 years, depending whether you count filming or broadcast date. But he kisses his companion. The Master is presumably supposed to resemble the first and by default the second, because the second was cast to resemble the first. So he's supposed to be a classic Master, not a newer Master. Then the next body, Richard E. Grant, has vanity issues, licks things he shouldn't, as well as continuing to like the companion his previous incarnation fell for. Tell me any of those bullet points that don't fit the 10th Doctor. Then these two are technically the wrong way round, but then the next one is Jim Broadbent, who is shy, older, and dies in an explosion. Does that not fit the 12th Doctor? Then the next one is Hugh Grant, who is described as handsome and is much more childish. Sound like Matt Smith? He also actually quite resembles Matt Smith with the long hair at the time. Then the next one is the one that people really picked up on. Joanna Lumley, who is, by those maths, the 13th Doctor, who is the first female and is blonde. And also has a female companion who she refers to as her best friend, who was the one that was the fiancé to the previous ones, but gets rejected by the companion. Then there's also gaining more regenerations after supposed to have died. The Master being turned good by the actions of the 12th Doctor at the moment of the 12th Doctor's death. The Doctor getting married. There being romantic tensions between the Doctor and Master once they're different genders, which does resemble 12 and Missy. And this was written by Moffat, so some of this may have been almost deliberate. I don't think he literally went, oh, I need some ideas, I'm going to rewatch something I made 20 years ago. But I think some of these were just ideas he'd had in his head. Because he did also use some of the same lines. Like, literally in Curse of Fatal Death, they say, look after the universe, I've put a lot of work into it. I don't think it's word for word, but Capaldi certainly says something along those lines. They also use the never cruel, never cowardly line, which I know did originate in classic. I'm not sure if it's only in novelisations, but it was older than this anyway. But it was used an awful lot throughout Moffat's run. There were also some other points that people made of the sewers reminded them of Heaven Sent. And the Doctor settling down to live with his companion certainly sounds a bit like 14, albeit not marrying them. I'd also say that if you are counting the two sketches the opposite way round, as the person who labelled that YouTube video is, and counting Lenny Henry as a later incarnation, That does also make the next Doctor after the blonde woman a black man. So there are a lot of those things. So back to the question, there is one big issue that I haven't yet stated. This person. From Series 12 Spyfall, Daniel Barton. Played by, who else? Sir Lenny Henry. Apologies if you can hear birds, they are being very noisy outside my window right now. So this causes another problem of we'd now have someone who would exist multiple times, but that's not unheard of in the Whoniverse, certainly. There are plenty of actors who have played multiple characters, not always referenced. Freema playing someone else in Series 2 before playing Martha was addressed by she made some reference to her cousin. There was obviously the entire thing with Peter Capaldi of this face was given to me to remind me. But there are plenty of others that have never been addressed. So this isn't a massive problem, but it is something you'd obviously need to consider of if you're saying he's canonically the Doctor, how is he also an evil businessman? But then even future actors of the Doctor are known to play baddies in earlier ones. I believe it's Colin Baker appeared in a serial, played another Time Lord in a serial a few series before he started. So it's not unheard of. But if you're going to argue it that way, then it does complicate things. So Daniel Barton complicates things, but I don't think this argument was going to be won anyway. So do you think any of these points are valid enough to actually make it canon? Probably not. But it is interesting to sort of break down and try and create an argument for it. There are points that could fit it. I said, if you actually count it as they are a different Doctor, maybe they bi-generated, without getting on too much to the subject of what will actually happen if the 14th Doctor dies again and how bi-generation will work that time. What if one of the Doctors prior to Paul McGann had at some point bi-generated and we didn't see it, and then we saw their later regeneration, and then that Doctor, the bi-generation one, regenerated until they became Rowan Atkinson, and then this all happened. So what if in a parallel universe Peter Davison didn't turn into Colin Baker, he turned into Lenny Henry? Then he regenerated twice more until he became Rowan Atkinson, and then all those events happened. That's not unfeasible. But then, so if that one of those two unknown regenerations, the first one of which is then also identical to the 14th Doctor, how parallel universe are we talking anymore? So there's lots of questions here that would need answers, and I don't think you'd ever win an argument actually trying to claim this, but if you want to try, I've given you some good bullet points. So I don't think this is actually enough to count any of these bits as canon, but it does beg the interesting question of having someone who has already played the Doctor in a spoof regenerate into the actual current canon Doctor. The actor who actually is the current canon Doctor, despite the difference in accent, as per my other video, where I used the sketch as an example of David Tennant's Scottish accent. See that video above if you haven't already. But then Doctor Who canon is always confusing, and now with all the Timeless Child and bi-generation, who knows how many incarnations of the Doctor there are out there. Any showrunner can make up any number now. So thank you for listening to this slightly weird ramble. I've got some videos planned for the next few weeks, but I'm not sure how exactly they're going to come out, so I'm not sure what next week's video will be. But polls and quizzes are continuing every 2 out of 3 days, and I do keep putting up other ones on the other days. So content should continue to be regular, despite the fact I'm getting busy again. But other than that, thank you for watching. Bye.